What's up, guys? Welcome to Trial Law TV. This week we have a special guest and we're going to be discussing a very important topic, and that is voter suppression. As we all know, we have a very important election coming up on November the 3rd, and so we really need to break down these issues. And so we brought in an expert today, and her name is Kera Lamotteabout. Kera, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
No problem, no problem. So before we get right into the meat of things, can you just give some quick background about what you do in this area?
So I'm a public engagement coordinator at the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. I do a lot of programming around social justice issues, so I've learned a lot about these topics, especially voting now that the presidential election is coming up, and we've done a lot of webinars about it.
Awesome. So before we get into some of the current tactics used to suppress the vote, can we talk about just some of the historical context and how this has maybe even evolved over time? Can you give us some more information about that?
Historically, voter suppression looked a lot like poll taxes, literacy tests, physical intimidation and violence at the polls. A lot of these tactics weren't really implemented until the 15th Amendment was passed. Okay. And black men got the right to vote.
So it seems, just to be clear, like the objective was, at least during those times, was that we don't want black people to vote, and we're gonna, although we claim that they're citizens, we're gonna do what we can to keep them from voting. So now we're in 2020. What's changed? Is that still going on?
There's still voter suppression. There's a lot of it, especially in Georgia. But the way that it's presented is a lot different. Today, it looks a lot like voter roll purges, faulty machines, especially in Georgia, voter ID laws that are very strict, consolidation of polling places without telling you.
You mentioned the consolidation of polling places. Like, how does that practically play out? Is it just a situation where, all right, we're going to have one location for this mass group of people, so they've got to wait, 6, 7, 8 hours? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, and it's usually in communities where there's a lot of people of color, and it makes it harder to actually get there. Like, it's not accessible. Okay. Because they make them either like super far away from you, or they just don't tell you that they're changing the location.
And I guess based on the research that you've done, is that just a coincidence that it's in these communities of color, or does it seem like it's more intentional, similar to like it was back in the old days, so to speak?
It's very intentional. Even whenever you think about like the beginning of voter suppression, they tried to say that it wasn't about race, but it definitely was. It always has been. It's always been about race.
And so now we have the commander-in-chief in Washington basically going on all these media publications saying that absentee ballots are fraudulent, that basically if he doesn't win the election, it's going to be because of that and because it's fraudulent. What more information do you have about that and that process, absentee ballots?
It's not fraudulent. I'll just say that people have been absentee voting for years, and it's been fine. It's just a way to scare people into either not voting or going to vote in person. And we know that with coronavirus, people of color are disproportionately getting sick from it. So it's just like another tactic to scare you.
And I guess that's the dilemma, is that we know with the mailing system, it's been extremely slow, particularly during this pandemic. So in the decision I'm having to wrestle with is, do I need to vote in person to make sure that my vote is counted, or can I really even rely on our mailing system to get the vote there, our absentee vote there, the ballot there? Yeah. Is that a dilemma you see as well?
Yes. I actually, if you do have an absentee ballot, if you requested one and you got it, you can either mail it back in, or they now have drop boxes where you can drop off your absentee ballot, or you can just take it to your elections office and just physically hand it to them.
Which one would you suggest to, I guess, have some more certainty that that ballot's going to get counted?
The elections office.
Okay. So I keep hearing this term provisional ballot. What is that, and how does that apply in this context?
So if you go to vote and they can't verify your address or verify you through your ID, or you're not showing up in the system, they'll give you a provisional ballot. But the thing to understand is that if you got a provisional ballot because they couldn't verify you through your ID, you're gonna have to go back within 3 days to your election office, or your vote isn't going to count. And sometimes they don't tell you that, even though they're supposed to.
So when is the in-person early voting time frame?
October 12th is when it starts, and it ends October 30th.
And is there a last day that you can request an absentee ballot?
October 30th, which is the Friday before Election Day.
And obviously Election Day is November the 3rd. How do you determine where you vote at?
So if you go to vote.org, you can check your polling location. And just to be safe, if you are voting in person, I would definitely check like the morning of before you leave, because like I said, sometimes they do change polling locations.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Kera. It's been very educational. Any last words to the viewers?
Thank you, Joseph. The only thing that I would say is just to make sure you go vote.
Absolutely. Get out there and vote. Let's get it, baby.